Hello again, 102. In this video, we will begin to identify some of the causes of the Great Depression of the 1930s. And it began at the end of 1929, and it brought with it widespread human misery. No other business slump had been so deep, so long, or so painful. 1 out of 4 Americans in 1932 was unemployed. In many large cities, nearly half the adults were out of work. Some 500,000 people had lost homes or farms because they could not pay their mortgages. Thousands of banks failed, and millions of people lost their life savings. Worst of all, many Americans lost hope. And again, here are the 3 early causes of the Great Depression: margin loans, reckless stock speculation, and a slowing economy. In 1929, President Hoover voiced concern about the orgy of mad speculation in the stock market, and he urged investors to be more cautious, but to no avail. Treasury Secretary Andrew W. Mellon's tax reductions had given people more money to spend and invest, and much of it went into the stock market. The nation's foremost economist, Irving Fisher of Yale University, assured investors in 1929 that stock prices have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. What made it so easy for hundreds of thousands of people to invest in stocks during the 20s was the common practice of buying stock on margin. That is, an investor could make a small cash down payment, the margin, on shares of stock and borrow the rest from a stockbroker who held the stock certificates as security in case the stock price plummeted. If stock prices rose, as they did in 1927, 1928, and most of 1929, the investor made enough profits to pay for the margin loan and reinvest the rest. But if the stock price declined and the buyer failed to meet a margin call for cash to pay off the broker's loan, the broker could sell the stock at a much lower price to cover the loan. By August of 1929, stockbrokers were lending investors more than 2/3 the face value of the stocks they were buying. Yet few people seemed concerned, and stock prices kept rising. By 1927, however, though, the economy is slowing. These leading sectors, steel production, residential construction, and automobile sales, were slowing, as was the rate of consumer spending. People are in debt, and they're trying to begin to pay off some of the debt that they had incurred. And by mid-1929, industrial production, employment, and other measures, as I said, were declining. Still, the stock market rose until Black Tuesday. Early in September of 1929, the speculative bubble burst when the stock market fell sharply. By the middle of October, world markets were in a steep decline. Still, most investors remained bullish. On October 22, 1929, a leading bank president assured reporters that there was nothing fundamentally wrong with the stock market or with underlying business and credit structures. The next week, however, stock market values tumbled, triggering a wild scramble as terrified investors tried to sell stocks whose values were falling. Then on Black Tuesday, October 29th, the worst day in the stock market's history to that point, widespread panic set in. And by the end of the month, stocks on the New York Stock Exchange had dropped an average of 37%. An atmosphere of gloom settled over the financial community. Life would no longer be ever again all fun and games, the comedian Harpo Marx sighed as he anticipated the onset of the worst depression in history. And there you see some of the clamor that was going on Wall Street on October the 29th, 1929. This was the worst drop ever to that point. Financial panic, and during 1930, the national economy sputtered and stumbled. Some 26,355 businesses shut down. Even more failed the following year. Half the textile workers in New England mills were jobless. The resulting slowdown in the economy was called a recession, but it became so severe and long-lasting that it came to be called the Great Depression. And the collapse of the stock market did not cause the Great Depression. Rather, it revealed that the prosperity of the 1920s had been built on weak foundations. And by 1932, more than 9,000 banks had closed their doors. And the nation's formerly robust economy experienced a shocking collapse that would last over 10 years. And there is the Great Depression defined, and it's not going to be until the Lend-Lease Act, where the arsenal of democracy is set up and full employment again returns in the Second World War. And we will go over one more video to fully discuss other causes of the Great Depression.